This is Ibrox. Hello and welcome to a very special review that we're going to start rolling out, hopefully as Rangers continue to progress through the European competition. And I'm very pleased to say that joining us on the pod this week from the Football Kentron pod, a podcast dedicated to Armenian football, is Aram Basmajian. Aram, how are you doing? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited to talk about this. And it's literally all I've been talking about all week, and I'm not sick of it at all. And I'm just so elated and excited to be here.
So I think it's really important that we level with our viewers. It's important that they know that you're actually not sitting in Armenia just now. Why don't you tell our people where you're sitting right now?
Sure. I'm actually from Los Angeles. And like the rest of my team, we are Armenian diasporans from around the world. We have a couple guys in Buenos Aires. We have a guy in Nicosia, someone in Paris. So we are very much international.
Brilliant.
As many Armenians are.
Absolutely. So listen, before we get into the tie that occurs at Ibrox on Thursday night, the first of two legs, of course, I'm keen for you to let us know a little bit about Football Kentron. Who are you? Just give us your bibliography, if you like.
Sure. So Football Kentron, as you had mentioned, is, as we like to say, the only English language podcast dedicated to Armenian football. And that's because it kind of came out of a place where, me and the guys who started Football Kentron realized that there is hardly any English coverage or English language coverage of Armenian football in general. And we, as fans, were getting kind of irritated by that. Every single time I would have to translate something from Russian or French or some other language. And I kept finding myself getting increasingly frustrated. And I was like, why doesn't anyone do this but in English? I'm an English speaker. Of course, I speak Armenian. I do read Armenian as well, but it takes a long time for me to read Armenian, and I would have to translate that as well. So I said, maybe it might be the time for me to just step up with these group of guys and create this sort of medium. And we chose to go with a podcast instead of more traditional written media because, we like the sound of our own voice, like everyone that does a podcast.
Don't we all? We're all guilty of that, I must be honest.
Yeah, and you know what? It's been a wild ride. Since we started the show, we had Armenia make it to the playoffs of the Europa League and lose. We had the Armenian national team win the Nations League and a promotion, and now we have the crazy roller coaster that is Alashkert's European campaign, plus the Armenian national team magically at the top of the World Cup qualifying groups as we speak. So it has been a wild ride, and we're just happy to cover it all.
So listen, we'll go straight into the game now. Tomorrow, so we're recording this on Wednesday night, we should say. The run-in so far for Alashkert has obviously been a wee bit topsy-turvy. It's been very traditionally similar to what we're used to in Scottish football, where progress is stunted a little bit in the Champions League and you drop into the level below. Let us know a little bit about how Alashkert find themselves staring down this two-legged affair with Rangers.
So Alashkert actually got here in the British Isles. I think that was the first stop. They played Connacht's Nomads,
absolutely.
The Welsh side. First trip was away to Wales, and I believe it wasn't even in their home stadium because I think
it was elsewhere. Yeah, I think you're right.
Elsewhere didn't correspond with UEFA standards and whatnot. So Alashkert went there, and there was a 2-2 draw away from home, and it could have easily been a lot more. I mean, Alashkert hit the post several times. Incredibly unlucky. It could have gotten a lot worse for Connacht's. And at home in Yerevan, it was a stalemate, again, with very much Alashkert domination, and went to extra time, and Alashkert ended up scoring the winner. So they went on to the second round to play Sheriff, who just won 3-0. They beat Red Star.
Great result for them, wasn't it? Goodness me.
Makes me feel even better that Alashkert went out to them 4-1 overall on aggregate. Of course, Sheriff is a fantastic side. I think they're very underrated because they come from Moldova.
Yeah.
Similar to a lot of smaller Eastern European countries, people don't tend to rate them as highly, even though they are good clubs. And I would say the same for Kairat Almaty, who Alashkert played in the UEFA Europa League third round qualifying a very, very good Kazakhstan club. And I know Kazakhstan is the butt of a lot of jokes in the British Isles when it comes to the European campaign. They say, oh, I can't believe I have to go all the way to Kazakhstan. But Kairat is a very, very good team. And Alashkert went away and drew 0-0 and won 3-2 at home in extra time after what was a incredibly frantic game with little to no defending on both ends. And again, Alashkert seemed to be pretty comfortable in those matches and was, especially in the second leg, very dominant.
So if we fast forward it, if you like, maybe fast forward to the future, if you like, the game Thursday night at Ibrox. Rangers, I think it's fair to say, are quite used to playing at Ibrox against teams that turn up with a low block. Occasionally we get that difference in European football when teams open up a little bit and try and beat us almost on our own patch, but that's good for us because it allows us to sort of play our sort of game. I just wonder if Alashkert will come to Ibrox and maybe do that, almost play for a draw in the hope that they can get us back to their place and have a real go at us in Armenia.
I could tell you, based on the manager, Alexander Grigorian, and what he kind of aligns himself with and what his philosophy is he adjusts his squad and his tactics based on who he's playing.
Yeah.
So he's going to, go into this fixture in Scotland fully knowing that the Rangers are going to want to score 6, 7, 8 goals past him and take a reserve team to Yerevan. And I, of course, hope that doesn't happen. But I can tell you that Alexander Grigorian is a very, very good manager. Don't be fooled by the fact that he's managing in the Armenian Premier League. He has managed several Russian Premier League sides, including Anzi and including Khimki, where several Armenian national team players play. And he is very good at what he does. Mm-hmm. Of course, he kind of doesn't really have the best personnel, I would say, right now. And he has an aging squad. The midfield is fairly old, but he does have a lot of talented players at his disposal and a lot of engines that just don't run out of gas. Yeah. So I would anticipate in this fixture at Ibrox for Alashkert to sit back. As much as, that's going to come to the frustration of a lot of Armenians who would want to see an away goal. Realistically, since UEFA changed the rule, it doesn't
matter anyway, does it?
Anymore. Yeah. So I could see a sitting deep, low block counter attack through the wings, and essentially a good press in the midfield. Alashkert is known for winning the ball in the center of the park, cutting out passes, and starting a very quick counter attack.
Okay.
Alashkert has scored several of their goals in European competition in that exact same fashion. Winning the ball in midfield, putting it through to the winger or the forward, either Papikian and Balo, and they just, put the ball in the back of the net from there.
So Balo, he scored twice in the Kazakhstan game, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah. And that was actually his first 2 goals for Alashkert. He is a new signing with the club. And you know what? A good start for him.
Listen, absolutely. I think it's given Alashkert a really, it's given them an interesting tie, and they're getting the chance to come and play at what will be, I'm sure, a very busy and noisy Ibrox Stadium on Thursday night. I'm sure the players will enjoy that. One thing I think for this Ibrox viewers and listeners, maybe looking in, watching and seeing what we're saying tonight, I wonder who you would say is the sort of main man for Alashkert, who we should look out for, who should we hope doesn't get near the ball almost for 90 minutes on Thursday night at Ibrox?
Well, there's 2 ways I can answer that question. There's 2 people I can pick out in particular. But the first one, and this is the person that we have been highlighting throughout this whole week, and even in our show, is Artak Grigorian. Okay. He is the central defensive midfielder for Alashkert and for the Armenian national team.
Right.
He is a career Armenian club player. He's played his whole life in Armenia. He's had several opportunities to leave. He could have gone to the Russian Premier League and played for very good sides if he wanted to, but he chose to stay at home. Uh-huh. And he is the definition of a workhorse. He is technically very good on the ball, and he is very good at cutting out passes and playing with a good press. He it looks very unorthodox. If you see him, he's going to be running, and you're just going to say, "How is this?" This doesn't really look like who you think is a.
There's hope for us all yet.
He is aging. He's in his 30s, so
right.
he's a very, very good player that always gives 110% every single time he's on the pitch.
Okay.
And that is kind of what leads me to say that he is the key player in this whole matchup. Because if Grigorian is having a good game, the rest of the team is having a good game. If he's able to pounce on the ball in the midfield, win it back, start a counterattack, drop deep, help with the low block, move the ball forward, Alashkert will have a good game. And that mirrors with Armenia. Grigorian had a fantastic game when Armenia beat Romania 3-2 in World Cup qualifiers, and same with the 2-0 win over Iceland. If he is having a good game, Alashkert will have a good game.
So he sounds very similar to our very own Stephen Davis, who we have at Rangers, who almost makes you tick. He's very much the machine in the background that just continues to keep going and keep going and going. And if he plays well, then there's a good chance everything else just kind of clicks into place. It's good to have a player like that sort of drives you through games, particularly if you need maybe that extra little jolt just to work things through a little, doesn't it?
Of course, and on the attacking end, there was a player. His name is Davidyan.
Okay.
But he just actually transferred right before the victory over Kairat Almaty in the Russian Premier League. So he was a product of the Russian Premier League. He came to Armenia. He is ethnically Armenian, dual citizen with Russia, and he just got called up to the Armenian national team for the upcoming matches. But he left the club, and instead, Alashkert brought in Arman Papikyan, who is played majority of his career in Poland and in Armenia,
okay.
Right winger. Again, this seems to be the theme with Alashkert. Very unorthodox looking player. I think one of the guys on our show, Charens, he would say this guy does not have the physique of a professional footballer.
Right. Okay.
He has more of the physique of a dad in front of the barbecue. But he's technically so good that it's like you kind of wonder maybe if he tried a little bit more in his career, he could have gotten a lot farther. But he is the main danger man on the right wing that will be whipping in those crosses and not afraid to take players on one-on-one.
So, Aram, I'm keen to know, our domestic form so far this season probably hasn't started so well. We obviously had the double header against Malmo, which was a bit of a disaster for the club, to be honest. I think we fancied that. We've been a wee bit stop-start, I think it's safe to say. Some disgruntlement as well within the supporter base, which you kind of expect. Rangers fans don't like losing games. No different to any football fan, certainly, but we certainly like to win our games. Domestically, it probably could be a little bit better from Alashkert. How is their season going domestically right now?
All the focus is on Europe right now. I think there has been a large rotation for Alexander Grigorian in the league matches. They have not had a single point so far in the season because of the heavy rotation. And I wouldn't say that's going to be indicative or foreshadowing how their performance is going to be in Europe because, the personnel have been largely different in the league. Uh-huh. So I think every single player is playing the game with, half of their brain is on the European tie. Whoever is likely to be starting and, not going into as many challenges because of fear of getting injured because they all want to be eligible to play in this match.
Of course.
So not the best form, but I mean, European-wise, not doing pretty bad. So I would say Alashkert's coming into this, I would say, in very good confidence, but they are wise enough to not be overconfident.
What do you think? I can't believe I'm asking you this, but what do you think if you were to win over the two legs? Mm-hmm. What would that mean for Alashkert and Armenian football in general? Maybe knocking out a European superpower, and I don't say it lightly, like Rangers knocking them out of European football.
Well, I mean, I think in the Armenian league, there has been a lack of European competition, and I think the fact that Alashkert have already qualified for the Conference League group stage, regardless, of this result, the loser of this is dropping down to the Conference League. I think they're happy either way, honestly.
Okay.
If they are to win, wow, fantastic, great. We were able to defeat Rangers. That would be great. But it's not like Armenian clubs haven't had landmark victories over large European sides.
Yeah.
For example, and this is of course under the Soviet Union, but in 1974-75 season, Ararat Yerevan hosted in the quarterfinals, I believe, Bayern Munich, that same Bayern Munich team that won, three
Yeah, of
times in a
course.
row,
Yeah.
the European
Yeah.
Cup. And in Yerevan, and they beat them 1-0 at home. They ended up, I believe, yeah, it was 1-0 at home and they lost 2-0 away, I believe. So it was a 2-1 aggregate overall. So, it's not like Armenians have never defeated a large side before. It has
Yeah. Yeah.
happened in our history
Of
here and
course.
there. But of course, having a head from another major league would be a good thing. But at the end of the day, I would say most Armenians are just happy to be here. And that seems to be very much the attitude that fans will be taking because, we're not naive. We know that Alashkert are not as good as Rangers. I think if you're, and a lot of people I know like to use this as a measurement, but look at the transfer value of each club.
Yeah.
Alashkert is something around 5 million American dollars,
Uh-huh.
and Rangers is something like 115 million. So
Yeah.
there is a sizable gap in, quality, I would say, between the two sides. However, I would say that Rangers would be wise to not underestimate Alashkert.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've had our games against teams that we think were better than. I mean, and they've came back to bite us in the backside on occasion. I think Malmo was one of those nights where we were almost, there was a desperation because it was obviously the return of football fans into the ground as well, which was huge, and it turned out to be quite a disappointing night. However, it has given us the chance to do this, so I can't complain.
Well, just to follow up on that, I think that's kind of the good thing, I would say, about following leagues and clubs and national teams that are not as highly rated as Scotland.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it gives you the opportunity to look at Malmo in a different lens.
Yeah.
For example, if an Armenian club was playing Malmo, I would be shitting bricks. I would say,
Yeah.
holy crap, we're going to host Malmo. We would be very fearful of them versus if you're looking at it in the Scottish lens, it would be, like how you said, a little more overconfident.
Yes. A couple more things I want to ask you. First thing is always it's always the interesting question when we do these sort of things. A score prediction from you, if you please.
So on our show, we're super famous for not giving score predictions. People ask us all the time. They're like, "Who do you think's going to win? What's the score going to be?" Blah blah blah. And we are very much a not score prediction show. But
Yep.
this is not my show. This is your show.
You're right. It's my show, so you have to predict.
I will give you a little bit of a score prediction. So I see this going one of two ways.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, this is literally going to go one of these two. Either Rangers going to absolutely batter Alashkert, and it's going to be a rout, or it's going to be a very, very close, high-scoring game. So I would say something along the lines of like a 2-2 draw at the Ibrox,
right?
Or like a 4-5-1 for Rangers.
So my prediction for tomorrow night, as I say, we're recording this on Wednesday. My prediction for Thursday night, I actually think Alashkert will score at Ibrox. I don't think we've looked too clever defensively, which is ironic because last season we were absolutely shit hot defensively. Right across the back, we were very, very impressive. But I don't think we've started that well defensively. And the game at Malmo, I think, sort of showed some frailties that are definitely existing in there.
Yeah, and there's going to be some familiarity between some of the players. For example, several players on this Alashkert team are Armenian national team players. Davidyan is the goalkeeper. Artak Grigorian, Daron Voskanyan was the central defender. They're not all necessarily starters. I would say Grigorian is probably the only guaranteed starter. Yurchenko is fairly new. And we hope Voskanyan never starts. So that'll be a little telling. But these Armenian players have some experience playing up against some of your players. For example, Yanis Hadji, Romanian guy. It's probably has a chip on his shoulder for going away to Yerevan and losing. And if he is to come on, players like Grigorian and Voskanyan already know what to expect. So there's that kind of depth that maybe the average fan wouldn't necessarily think about. But those kind of connections do exist.
I think it's good to hear you talk about Yanis Hadji. He's a real favourite of mine, and I hope the support, get the chance to see him on the pitch on Thursday night. Great player.
Why
We're
doesn't he
very lucky to
start?
have him.
I don't understand why he doesn't start.
I think, I think it's a fair point, and it could probably take us into another pod, and I'm very aware of our time. I think Rangers are lucky at the moment that we do have an abundance of riches in the position that Yanis Hadji plays. I think you will see a bit more of him this season than you saw last. And last season he had he had the most assists for us last season, and he didn't play every game, not by any matter. I mean, so if we see him a bit more this season, you would hope to get a bit more from him. As far as my prediction for Thursday night, I think Rangers will win 3-1.
3-1? Yeah,
Which,
that sounds like a reasonable scoreline.
and I think that will still make the tie in Armenia still a little bit tasty. It'll still be something there. The Armenians will know that maybe if they score in their patch over there, then it'll make it a little bit more interesting. I will, of course, fancy Rangers to progress over the two legs, which I know won't surprise you. But I think Rangers will do it 3-1 on Thursday night.
Yeah, and from my understanding, you guys have the Old Firm derby, right? Right after the second leg. So
we do, yeah, on the Sunday. So and that's a huge game for the support to come back to, for the players to come back to. And don't get me wrong, it's a game that will largely look after itself. It's the first one of the season. It's good to get bragging rights until the next one. But I think because domestically maybe our form has been a little up and down, it would be really nice to come back from Armenia on a positive note and go into that game against Celtic on a bit of a high. So hopefully we get the opportunity to do that. Just before I let you go, Aram, it's good to hear you talk about how your podcast is trying to maybe introduce and educate people on some of the Eastern European countries that aren't mainstream, if you like. How's that working out for you? Finding that difficult, or is it? I think, joking aside, you led with it yourself when you spoke about Sheriff from Romania. There almost is a bit of an ignorance towards those smaller countries because I don't know. Is it because you don't see them on Sky every other week? I'm really not sure.
You know what? I would say the answer to that is yes, because like I said, coming from an Armenian perspective, I'm playing against Sheriff of Moldova, and I know, sure, the Moldovan league isn't the best league, but I know Sheriff is a giant, is an Eastern European giant. So I think a lot of people, because maybe they don't see them regularly in the Champions League,
absolutely,
have paid the most attention, is why they would think that way. But from an Armenian perspective, and coming as someone who is trying to educate more people about Armenian football, I think a lot of that comes from a lack of information and availability of information. And that's kind of a gap that we're trying to fill, because we know, of course, Armenian clubs, since Armenia's independence, haven't made a European competition appearance in the group stage, but we know the capability of our own clubs. And this has also given us a little bit of insight and a little bit of leverage into looking at other countries, other leagues, and other teams, and how they are. And one thing we've learned is that we never go into a tie thinking we're the favorites. Specifically with Kairat of Kazakhstan, a lot of Armenian players leave the Armenian Premier League to go to the Kazakhstan league and play there. Specifically, Kamo Hovanesyan, one of our starting fullbacks on the national team, actually plays for Kairat.
Right. Okay.
So we have learned to never overestimate any team, and we know the value, strengths, and weaknesses of our own sides, and we're just trying to share that with everyone. And so far, it's been good. Hasn't been too difficult, and people normally ask us if we have a hard time getting information here and there, but
you manage.
So far it hasn't been that difficult.
Good man. You keep doing that. Listen, I'll tell you what we'll do. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. So after the second leg, we'll get together and do a little rehash of what happened in these 2 90-minute ties, if you fancy it.
Yeah, of course. I would love it. As long as we don't get smashed.
If I know that if you do get smashed and I keep trying to get you and your phone rings out, there's no danger you're coming back on. And the same applies for me. Do not try and get in touch if you put us out of Europe, okay? Listen.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think Rangers can comfortably think they will very likely go through. And of course, I mean, we have no reason to not admit that. We know our own capabilities. So I would say Rangers fans should be confident, but you know what? There's always that sneaking suspicion, that 10% of the mind that they should be wary of.
Aaron, before I let you go, why don't you give us a little idea of where we can find Football Kentron in the social media?
Sure. So we are at Football Kentron. That's Kentron on Twitter and Instagram. We also have a YouTube channel, which we're trying to get up and running, that we're just posting our shows on there with some visuals. And you can find our show on Apple and Spotify. Just search up Football Kentron on wherever you find your podcasts, and we should be popping up over there.
Brilliant, Aaron. Well, listen, I will wish you best of luck for Thursday night. While if I mean it, I'm not entirely sure. However, I will wish you best of luck. Hopefully, people will leave me, and we will we'll get back together after leg 2, and we'll do something very similar, and we can do a breakdown of the game. All right.
Sure, sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, and this is Ibrox, Adam. Thank you.